Hi, I'm Deborah Roth, and I'm delighted to be speaking to you from the Masters Channel. Today, what I'd love to introduce you to, or maybe give you more information about, is what I call transformative ritual. And I distinguish that as opposed to any other kind of ritual because it's really meant to create some kind of shift for us. So what we'll do in our 15 minutes together is kind of explore this notion of how we can create everyday simple ritual in our lives. I'll give you just the basics to begin with. It's just kind of an overview. And really reclaim what it means to bring this notion of practical spirituality, of ritual, of symbolic action. That's really all ritual is. And the components so that you can begin to create that for yourself. How's that sound? The first question I'd love to ask you is, what kinds of rituals have you participated in the last day, in the last week, the last month? Think about it for a minute. What does that mean to you when I ask you what rituals have you participated in? Now, for many of us, when I lead this with groups and classes, people will say, this blank look will come over their face and they'll say, oh, I just don't do ritual. And others will come up with elaborate things that they do when they wake up in the morning, or for particular holidays or special occasions. But the truth is that ritual really falls along a spectrum. And I explored this, and this is what my master's thesis was actually on 15 years ago, the power of transformative ritual, and really kind of pulling apart this notion of what ritual is to us. We might have some kind of weird connection to satanic rituals, or to just very simple, don't step on the cracks in the sidewalk and break your mother's back. That, I would have to say, those types of the stepping on the cracks types of ritual are on one very far end, kind of superstition and habit, because the rituals of waking up in the morning, brushing our teeth, getting ready to start our day, that's certainly one end of the ritual spectrum. At the far end are those really big occasions that we mark with meaning, with deep, soul connection. They could be weddings, they might be birthday, special birthday celebrations, but things that we've attached a piece of our soul and a piece of ourselves to. And even those, I think one of the things that really helps to know what distinguishes a transformative ritual from just a nice little ritual is that there are certain pieces of it that if we just have in the backs of our minds what those components are, we can transform just an everyday birthday party into something that's really magical and special for the person, especially if that person is us, but it doesn't have to be. So I'd like to start, I hope you're thinking about that question of what kind of rituals you participated in and thought about, did you immediately go to the brushing the teeth kind, or did you think of maybe some spiritual ritual that you have started or that you want to expand on? And what I'd like to encourage you to do is think about how we want to move beyond what we think we're doing in our everyday definition of ritual. And how we do that is to understand that the social nicety types, sorry, we were at the end of the scale for that, the social nicety types, the habits, really many of them are just always going to be that. And that what differentiates them is that they're more unconscious, more habit, maybe something spontaneous that we don't have to put a lot of thought to. And when I talk about transformative rituals at that other end of the spectrum, what we're talking about is something that we have taken the time to think about ahead of time, to bring a certain level of consciousness to and personal meaning to. So some of the ways that we do that, I like to think of there being four major components to creating transformative ritual. First is to create a very clear intention. Is it to celebrate the birth of your sister-in-law and your brother and sister-in-law's child? Is it simply to acknowledge the end of a year, whether it's a birth year, whether it's your birthday, or whether it's the new year, which of course is a very predictable time to do rituals? But to be very clear and to write it down, I think when we're declaring our intentions, the first step to kind of get it out of our head and begin to bring power to it is to concretize it, to make it concrete in, in our everyday world. And the first and I think easiest way to do that is to write it down. Once we have a very clear intention, what we then want to do is create sacred time and space to do this. Now, if you're doing it on your own, a solitary ritual, then that means closing your door, turning off the phone, maybe lighting a candle. Candles have been used for millennium as a way to connect with the divine, whether you consider the divine somewhere up there, out there, or somewhere deep within you. Candles are a classic way to do that. Put on some beautiful music that matches your intention. If your intention is to rev yourself up and to create a really clear vision of the work that you want to do, then you might put some more energizing, some fun, funky music on. If your intention is perhaps around healing, somewhere around looking at what you want to do to heal yourself after a relationship has died, or maybe it's physical healing, but something more meditative. Think about that. The music, it doesn't. We could go into all kinds of things because music therapy, as we know, is pretty comprehensive. But think basically slow rhythms, quiet rhythms for grounding, meditative, healing kind of rituals, and faster rhythms. Could be drumming, it could be fast piano concertos, whatever appeals to you. But elevate the energy by using fast rhythms for some of these more active rituals, more active intentions that you want to create movement around. So, and sacred time, so that's creating the sacred space, and I think music has a lot to do with that. Creating the environment. You can see surrounding me, I'm in one of my favorite rooms in our house, and behind me, I don't know if you can see her very well, is Lakshmi, who is the Hindu goddess of prosperity and abundance. I always feel like we can never have too much of that. So you may see me often in front of here, but I'll try and move it around. So think about your environment. Settle yourself in a place, if you're going to be sitting, because we can do active meditations too. And active rituals, where we actually move around, and I'll talk more about that in future videos. But for now, we've talked about creating a clear intention, and number two is creating very sacred space and sacred time so that you can really come to yourself, come to your scintilla, your soul spark. Meister Eckhart was a wonderful German mystic back in the Middle Ages, and I love that term, your scintilla. Come back to your soul spark. And once you're in that place, you've got your clear intention, you've written it down, speak it out loud, really bring all kinds of energy to it in whatever way you can. The next step then is to think about what symbols you want to use. Symbols are the language of the unconscious, and long after we've forgotten what a particular symbol represented in the ritual, it's anchored very deep within our psyche, very deep within our heart. A wedding ring, engagement ring. I don't know how well you can see mine, but that's a classic symbol, obviously, from one of the. I always like to say when I do weddings that weddings are one of the highest forms of sacred play. And long after we forget all the vows and everything that happened in a wedding ceremony, we have this very powerful symbol that will carry us throughout our lives and remind us of the words that we've spoken, of the commitments that we've made. So think about if you are creating a healing ritual. Maybe you want to create some sort of talisman that will remind you that you can hold and touch, that will remind you of the essence of the healing that you want to create, the qualities that you want to surround yourself with in order to be fully healed, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it is. But create something, I say usually tangible. It doesn't have to be, but certainly music triggers things, and we'll talk in a minute all the different ways that you can use symbols powerfully. But I think a tangible symbol to take away from your ritual and to carry with you to trigger consciously and eventually mostly unconsciously the power that you raised during your ritual is very important. So using symbols, surrounding yourself with symbols, using colors, the environment that you're in. I love that the hanging behind me is surrounded by gold. I mean, that's such a perfect abundance symbol, isn't it? So think of colors, think of as being symbolic, and you can read all kinds of different places what the symbolism, the magical associations of different color means. And of course, color therapy is a very valid kind of therapy that people use nowadays. So as we're moving through then, we're now to the fourth major component of creating transformative ritual, and that is activating all of your senses. And I think in some ways, that's really what brings all those other three together. We've declared our intention, what it is that we really want to bring our strong focus to in this moment or moments in time, in sacred time and space. That's the second one, that we're creating this powerful ritual around. And then the symbols can manifest themselves in ways that have symbolic connections to each of our five senses. So I talked a moment ago about the visual, our sense of seeing. Surround yourself with both objects and colors, things that delight you or things that ground you, whatever is associated with the energy of the ritual, of the energy of the intention that you've set for your ritual. We talked about music, the auditory sense. Smell is probably the most evocative of all of the senses, and that's because it's directly connected to our limbic system, which is the seat of all memory and the seat of our emotions. So there are countless fabulous books on aromatherapy and on using associated aromatherapy oils, essential oils, to trigger different emotions or to trigger different healing responses. So, or it could just be, you can go by the book. You can look at a cookbook, so to speak, and find oils that most seem to be in alignment with your intention and the symbols that you're using. But then just, pick aromas that have a really deep connection to you. Palm's hand cream, I don't even know if they make it anymore, always was a trigger for me thinking about my grandmother. And so there's something very nurturing about Palm's hand cream and that smell for me. So it could be a very personal connection, aromatherapy-wise, or it could be out of a cookbook. Touch, I talked in the beginning about how important I think having a tactile kinesthetic piece of our ritual is. And by doing that, we anchor it really in our bodies. I mean, there's a whole, and we'll talk about this in other rituals too, there's a whole other dynamic that we bring in when we talk about women's rituals, and one of the things that we do with that, and certainly this can apply to you too, guys, but it's bringing us back to our bodies, to have something to hold and touch, to place on our heart, to hold in our hand when we're meditating, that again brings us back. The whole idea is to keep triggering that intention, because the intention that we have set during our ritual will constantly be energized every time we listen to the piece of music, or we have our symbol, or we smell a smell that we've associated with a powerful ritual that we've done. So those are the four basic components of ritual. If we've done it correctly, and I always say there's nothing you can do that is wrong when you're creating your own ritual with intention, with meaning. But I think what we want to achieve ultimately is a shift in consciousness, whether you're doing it with a group of people, whether you're doing it for yourself, some sort of shift. And also some sort of stepping over the threshold, the limen, into a place from the mundane world into the magical world, into a place of liminality is the word that we use in ritual. So you want to achieve this feeling of moving to a spiritual place within yourself and in this environment that you've created. So shifting consciousness, creating this sense of liminality, of crossing a wonderful threshold, and you're there. You've created your own transformative ritual.